Hello, I'm James Preston and welcome to another edition of Executive Corner Expert Talks, exclusive to Cowkine TV. With billions of COVID shots having been mandated by various governments, the desire for more information surrounding the process of their creation and approval from governing bodies has reached fever pitch. The FDA, or Food and Drug Administration, who is in charge of regulating the vaccines in the US, was recently hit with a Freedom of Information Act request from a group of 30 scientists and academics from across the globe, wishing to gain an insight into the approval process of the Pfizer vaccine. The first 500 pages have been released from the drug manufacturer, and to talk us through the documentation is investigative journalist from Trial Site News, Sonia Elijah. Sonia, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, James, for having me on.
Well, Sonia, before we get into the details of what the first batch of documents includes, let's talk about the insane response from the FDA and how long they want to actually make this information public. Can you take us through the time frame?
Yes, just taking you back a bit, around August 23rd, the FDA licensed the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine for individuals aged 16 and over. Then a large group of about 30 scientists and academics filed a Freedom of Information Act request a few days later, and requesting to see all the documentation that the FDA relied on to license, to actually authorize emergency use authorization of the vaccine. Now, under FOIA law, Freedom of Information Act law, the 1967 law, an agency has up to 20 days, within 20 business days, to determine whether they're going to comply with the request. It took the FDA, I think it was around November 20th, when they did release the first batch of documents. And what they released was less than 1% of the actual documentation they have. They have up to 471,000 pages. They released just a few hundred, and they responded that they were going to release at a rate of 500 pages a month. That would take them to 2076 to release all the documentation. They then came back and said, actually, we've got additional pages. It's going to take us up to 2096 to release all the information to the public. So it's really shocking.
Well, see, the thing I would have imagined is, given that this has been rolled out at such a large scale, we should be getting this information as soon as humanly possible. And for me, 70 years is nowhere near that kind of time frame. What's the usual turnaround time for a Freedom of Information Act request?
Yes, like I said, it's about 20 business days that an agency determines whether to comply with the request. 20 business days.
But Sonia, in terms of delivery of the actual documentation, though, is that something that we can usually see for that size of information? It's probably not something we've dealt with too many times in the past in terms of the sheer volume of pages and documentation. When we're seeing such things as maybe like 100,000 pages, what's typically the turnaround period? Is that maybe like a month after that request has been lodged?
Well, I know that they can do a lot better than 500 pages a month. So they're literally going at a snail pace. They're dragging their feet. They're doing all they can to sort of prolong the time to do it. So it's really shocking. And the public deserve to know, and the FDA, needs to work a lot harder to facilitate the FOIA request.
Absolutely. Now, let's look squarely at the first 500 pages itself. What generally is covered in this first release, and what time period does it tend to focus on in terms of the approval process?
So the analysis that I did, I targeted a specific document called the cumulative analysis of post-authorization adverse event reports of the Pfizer vaccine. And that covered the period from December 1st, 2020, when it was given emergency use authorization, to February 28, 2021. So that's a 3-month period that we're talking about. And there's a lot you can actually glean from this document. Even though there are many unknowns, it is a redacted document, unfortunately. So we don't know the number of total doses given, so then we can't calculate the incidence rates. But what we do know is that about 1,228 deaths were recorded in that 3-month time period, which is very alarming because you have the former chief medical officer of Pfizer, talking to the Washington Journal around April of this year, saying that there have been no deaths recorded directly because of the vaccine, and that no corners were cut. So that's sort of quite shocking when we know that this document was produced. The cutoff period was February 28th of this year, and then we have the astounding number of adverse events, and we're talking about over 40,000 adverse events were recorded, and not only that, so those are individual. Actually, 40,000 individual cases. So for the individuals reporting, and then 150,000 events, meaning sort of symptoms. So one case you could have various symptoms, 3 or 4 symptoms connected to an individual.
And according to this document, sorry Sonia, according to the document though, how closely linked to the COVID vaccine from Pfizer are these actual adverse events? Is there a direct correlation according to this report?
Well, what is interesting, because they give us some statistics, they give us the median value. So for a lot of these event outcomes, the median value is less than 24 hours. So that's the time from a person has taken the vaccine, the actual adverse event occurring is less than 24 hours. So you have, for example, in the category of anaphylaxis, you have 9 recorded deaths, and out of the 9 deaths, 4 deaths occurred on the same day that the individuals took the vaccine. So that gives a very strong indication of vaccinal death causality.
Yeah, that's a very close connection based on, especially as you said, 4 in the same day. From this report as well that I've seen you with what you've done with Trial Site News, it also appears that women are actually disproportionately affected by the drug. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, so it's really alarming to see that literally across the board in all categories of adverse events, you're seeing women 3 times more affected by these adverse events. But what particularly stands out is the category of anaphylaxis. You have women 8 times being more affected by that adverse event. So that's very alarming. And it sort of reveals there's a gender specific vaccine safety risk going on here. And what is also very alarming is that throughout this document, Pfizer says there's no new safety risks recorded. So there's nothing new to report here. So it's all brushed under the carpet.
Because I know one thing we've seen is that certainly here in Australia, there's been a bit of hesitation from our GPs and other physicians who have suggested if you are looking to have children soon, if you are pregnant, then you shouldn't be taking the vaccine. I mean, what's been the scenario over in the UK, for example? Is that a similar situation?
Well, I think pregnant women are encouraged to take the vaccine here. They're protect yourself, protect your unborn child. And it's very concerning because in this document, there is a category called missing information. So it's what was missing. Yes, exactly. It's what was missing in the original package that was sent to the FDA. And so what I have analysed, what I've done a report on is an amended version of what Pfizer has given to the FDA. So they include now the missing information, which is to do with pregnancy and lactation. And you have adverse events happening there. You have spontaneous abortions and premature births and neonatal deaths.
Spontaneous abortions. Can you go into that in a bit more detail? So what exactly does that entail? I mean, is this pregnancies that were otherwise completely healthy until this point?
Yes, so it's a pregnant mother having a miscarriage. Yeah, it's very alarming.
And again, is this in that same 24-hour period? What's the period we're looking at for this data set?
I'm actually just going to look at, for the pregnant I don't have it. I don't, obviously, it's quite a long report I wrote,
Yes,
so I don't
yeah.
have the data specifically for that. But I remember there were about 270 unusual pregnancies, and there were about 25 spontaneous abortions, from what I remember.
Yeah, that's incredible
And we're
numbers
talking
there.
about a 3 month time period here, right?
Yeah.
And as we know, we are coming up to a year, of the vaccine